J.D. Vance, Republican Senate candidate, who joins me now. J.D., for some of us, a lot of Republicans talk too much about, lowering sales tax rates in the cocktail bar of the Titanic. You seem to be a bit more urgent about some of the big picture questions.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Mark, and thanks for having me on. And if folks are interested, please go to jdvance.com to learn more about our campaign. I mean, look, I think we're facing an existential crisis in this country where you have the leadership of the country that really doesn't seem to care about the country or the people who live in it. They are undercutting our wages through mass immigration. They're shipping a lot of our manufacturing base off to China, allowing the Chinese to build their middle class on the backs of ours. And they're increasingly unwilling to even reckon with their own failure. And so if you're a normal guy looking at your country going to hell and you complain about it, they call you a racist or a bigot or a xenophobe or maybe just a garden variety idiot. And I think somebody needs to step up and say, look, this is not okay. It's not okay to plunder this country that our grandparents and our parents built. It's also not okay to shoot us down, to censor us on our big tech platforms every time that we want to complain about it. And both of those things are happening. The economic war against the middle class, the cultural war against traditional American values, and I think they're very related.
What does the right get by just kind of going along? Because we've got a left that openly wants to get there, to floor it, pedal to the metal, and go all the way with this stuff. And we've got the right that too often gives the impression that it's happy to follow after them as long as they're just in second gear, third gear, and dialing it back a bit.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think the big reason is that the right is really terrified of power. I think the left is enthusiastic about using power. The right is terrified of power. So just take one example, right? The big tech companies, which effectively control the flow of information in our society now. You cannot speak your mind as a conservative without fear of getting censored by Facebook, Twitter, Apple, whoever else. Well, if you try to do something, when I say we should be doing something about big tech, breaking up their monopolies, making their business model, which effectively just allows them to steal data from us, making that business model illegal or unacceptable, what people always say is, well, these are private companies, we can't do anything about them. Well, first of all, that's total BS. They're not private companies. They've been given special privileges by the government for decades. And on the other hand, what do we care more about? The interests of multinational companies that hate this country or the First Amendment? I care more about the First Amendment.
No, and what's ridiculous about that argument is that these companies are already bigger than most nations on Earth, and the few nations they're not bigger than, such as China, they're entering into a malign alliance with. And yet the right spends its time having these sort of college dorm room abstract discussions about the issue.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You know, Google right now is actively conspiring with and working with the Chinese government. They've actually been very open about this fact. At the same time, the 29-year-old woke idiots who work at Google refuse to allow Google to enter into contracts with the U.S. Department of Defense. I mean, this company is not a national company anymore. It's not actually invested in the nation that allowed it to become so wealthy and so powerful. Why do we keep on giving it special privileges? And you're exactly right. I'm just not okay with this anymore. I want my kids to grow up in a good country, not a terrible one. If I want my kids to grow up in a good country, we've actually got to push back against the institutions that are taking from it.
Quick final question, J.D. The Trump era, Trump managed to smash through. He was a big enough personality. He could talk about some of these things and at least 5 years ago get elected on them. What we haven't seen is whether anybody else can actually get elected on Trumpian-type big picture themes. Do you think you can do it?
Yeah, I think that I can, and I think you're exactly right. You know, I obviously didn't fully appreciate the president's appeal in 2016, but I find it hilarious people who are surprised that I think the way that I do, given, you know, I've been going on Tucker Carlson's show for 3 years talking about these themes. I clearly believe and care about this stuff and have for a long time. But I think other candidates can win on some of these themes because this is where the voters are. So many people think that Trump was all about personality. I don't think they give the president or the broader movement enough credit because it's not just about personality. It's about the ideas. It's about breaking up big tech. It's about preventing the destruction of our manufacturing base. And shipping it off to China. It's about real things. And I think that if other folks are willing to run on those real things and not just RNC talking points, then we actually
Yeah.
have a real chance to win this election and actually take the country back.